What is up, Instagram Live, Facebook, YouTube, wherever in the world you're watching this? I am excited that you are here. We have a very special guest joining us in just a few moments. We're going to be talking on the topic of boundaries. What are these? Why are they important? How to have them? When to have them? Where to have them? I think it's very, very useful topic right now with everything that's going on in the world, is to really understand the concept of boundaries and to uphold your boundaries. I was actually talking to someone this morning who, through family dynamics, she had a lot of boundaries that were getting stepped on by people. There was one person in the family that other people said she shouldn't talk to, and she wanted to talk to this person, and they were telling her, no, you're not allowed to, or we're going to be upset at you. And then she felt upset at herself to not be able to talk to this person. And, it's so interesting for her ability to uphold the boundaries with both sides and say, hey, this is how I'm going to choose to live my life. And these are the boundaries I'm going to keep in place to make sure that the way I'm living works in the world around me. I'm not going to let this person or these people stomp on my boundaries. So while we're waiting, while she's tuning in, oh, there she is. Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Very well, very well. I'm
Good
excited
to
to
see
have
you.
this conversation. It's been
2 years?
year, 2 years?
I think it's 2 years.
Wow, time flies, huh?
It does. You haven't changed at all.
No, still got a
You're
giant
not a
smile.
day older.
Last time I was live on here, someone says, my God, that guy's smile is so interruptive. I was like, my goodness, I don't know how to not interrupt his ability to focus, but clearly my smile brought something to life.
It's contagious.
Hopefully. So, Michelle, thank you for joining me here. Thank you for taking time to have this conversation. I really, really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I'm really chuffed to see you again.
Same. And for people who are tuning in, can we give them a little bit, before we dive into the topic of boundaries, which I think is so useful right now. I think it's so important of a topic for people to really understand. And I think it's such an important topic for them to uphold right now. I think so many boundaries are just getting stomped on. And we'll describe what we mean by boundaries as well, because certain things do need to get rearranged in the world. But when people decide to just whack everybody and everyone starts living in pure reaction of everybody else, I think at that point it just gets messy. And I think if they were able to uphold some sort of boundary, all of a sudden things start to have more fluidity to them. It starts to have more peace and calm and
You feel safer.
Yeah.
You're taking care of yourself.
Totally. But before we dive in, can we give people a little bit of backstory from you on your journey and where you've been and where boundaries came into play for you?
Yeah.
And the reason we're talking about boundaries is I saw you give an amazing speech on boundaries about 2 years ago. And I had never heard anyone give a talk on boundaries before. And as you were sharing, I was taking so many different notes. I was like, this is fucking brilliant. Like this is useful. Like why?
Boundaries are so important.
Yeah.
So the reason that I'm probably very well placed to be speaking about them is that 20 years ago, when I started on my own personal development journey, my teacher, Dr. Susie Strang, and a neurolinguistic programming, she said to Michelle, about time we talked about boundaries. And I said, what are they? Coming from an abusive, neglectful childhood and then acting that out in my adult life up until I was about 40, when I came into this industry, if you like, I then became a coach. I didn't have a clue, and I've broken about every boundary possible and caused havoc in my life. So the difference in my life the last 20 years, now I of course teach this, with my clients and anybody else who will listen, but I speak from the heart. These are a game changer, and however much abuse, however much neglect you've had in your life, please don't let that define you. We can actually get a right to say no or a right to say yes, because a boundary can be a yes as well. but I'm going to give you some really simple tips today on how to start boundarying like a mofo.
I love it. I love it. And so, in that journey and that experience, when someone first brought up the concept of boundaries, and your thought was, what are those?
Absolutely. I had no idea.
And what are they? What was the explanation you were given then? And then what have they evolved into now for you?
Okay, now the truth is I can't really remember 20 years ago, but what I do know is that I grasped it, I practiced it, and that's really important to understand. Boundaries are like a muscle. You practice them, you're not going to be brilliant at them straight away, but I'm going to help you with that part too. For me, what they are, boundaries are how we show up in the world and let the world know how we want our wants, our needs, our values, and our beliefs met by other people and the world around us. And a phrase I like to use is we keep our side of the street clean using boundaries. And even if somebody else is over there getting really messy and chucking their junk in our street, we then have the wherewithal, the tools to put a stop to that, to keep our lane clean.
I love that. I love that. And in my experience, that's where it starts. Kind of that ownership or responsibility to keep your lane clean. To say, hey, this part of it's my responsibility. And for someone to make the decision, that's a big decision. Because there's a lot of people who not only don't have boundaries, but are also unwilling to accept responsibility of kind of the mayhem they create on their side of the street.
You're absolutely right. And, there are some things that you can look at to say, well, people say, how do I know if I've got healthy boundaries? So if your life is full of drama, if you are resentful, if you say yes when you mean no, you're already overwhelmed and your brain is saying, no, don't say yes, but it just comes out of your mouth. If you are scared of how it will impact a relationship. So boundaries are absolutely essential for a healthy relationship. As somebody who's been a love addict and codependent, what have you, trust me, I get these messy boundaries. I've been in there. But when you're able to clean up your side of the street and allow somebody the space to clean up theirs, that's powerful stuff.
Very powerful, very powerful. And so we might start off, maybe we start in the place that says, hey, there's that decision to own your side of the street and whatever mess you're currently making. Yep. There's a decision to then place a boundary. And if we talk about, maybe define what kind of boundaries are there. I would assume there's more than one type of boundary. Because like you said, a boundary might be a no, a boundary might be a yes. Okay. But what types of boundaries exist?
Okay, so let me split this into two. So the first thing is the categories of boundaries around your own life wheel. So there's financial boundaries, there's sexual boundaries, there's emotional boundaries, there's relationship boundaries, physical boundaries. I could go on, but you get my drift, yeah? But when we actually talk about the types of boundaries, there are rigid boundaries, there are soft boundaries, and there are flexible boundaries. Now, there are a few others as well, but I'm going to stay with those three because I want to really keep this punchy and helpful. Yeah. So if somebody's got rigid boundaries, the chances are that they push people away, that they are, so let's look at it, the diva and the doormat, okay? So you've got that lovely trajectory. All us coaches love a trajectory, 0 to 10. If I don't respect my boundaries, I'm a doormat. Let me put it at 0, okay? So I have soft boundaries. Pretty much, here I am, do what you want with me. And then I might cry or get resentful or whatever, but I'm not owning my shiz. Yeah. Over the other side, we've got a 10. We've got the diva archetype. And that's the person that really enforces rigid boundaries. It's my way or the highway, but she doesn't or he doesn't respect other people's boundaries. Now, of course, I'm going extreme to make the point. Yeah. We want to be at a nice 5 or 6, and that's called a flexible boundary. Yeah. So a flexible boundary means that I can show up in the world and pretty much boundary as I go, because I know what I want. I know my needs. I know how I need to get them met, and I know my deal breakers. If we know that about ourselves, because a lot of people don't even know how they feel. They don't understand what they need and what they want. So that's where we have to come back to to basics.
Absolutely. So 3 types of boundaries to recap for people watching. There's flexible boundaries, which is what we're aiming for. There's rigid boundaries, which is kind of that diva, my way or the highway.
Got it.
And then there's no boundaries or soft boundaries, which are do whatever you want with me and I'll just hold on for the ride.
That's it. And normally that's the person that's moaning like a drain. You go into resentment, but you keep doing the same thing. Okay.
Wow.
And we show up and not do that because we're scared. If we put a boundary down, the other person will judge us, they will reject us, they will, or we could be conflict averse, and we're second guessing there'll be a conflict if I say to you, you know what, when you throw your socks on the floor rather than put in a laundry basket, I feel like a skivvy. Yeah? So just saying how I feel, what you do with that is absolutely your business. It's not mine. It's an important delineation.
Yeah, it's very powerful, very powerful. That ability to dance between the two is the game, is the fun, is the dance, is the beauty there. And I think that space for people is so interesting. And I was just listening to a program and it's titled Why Men Lie and Why Women Lie. And one of the reasons it listed was exactly this concept of if they feel it will harm the relationship, they're more likely to lie to maintain the relationship if they're in their feminine. And I was like, interesting, because keeping the relationship tight is more important than a momentary truth.
It is.
And they're talking about little stuff. Like, did you open the refrigerator? And like, no, I didn't do that.
Just my bum look big in this.
Yeah, but they're talking about that because it would be more important to maintain the relationship than the own, I definitely left the fridge open.
And that's sensitivity, isn't it? There is
Totally.
some, and that's where we've got to be flexible. And that's why I want to keep that middle ground.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. And then it said for a man, I'm sorry, not a man, masculine energy, more willing to lie around, what was it? To make progress of some sort, of productivity.
Yeah.
So like, hey, can you get here on time? It'd really be important to me if you showed up on time. And they're like, well, I have this big deal I'm working on.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the big deal. It was the fact that they left late. Yeah. And they're more, because of productivity, they're more likely to lie. And I thought that was so interesting. I think it wraps into the boundaries around the concept of where is that, a deal breaker? And where is that something that we can be flexible on? One thing the teacher said that was so interesting in this concept of lying was, if you reward people for telling the truth instead of punishing people for lying, you'll get more truth. Yeah. And I went, oh, interesting. Because how often are we told we set a boundary in a place that says, if you lie to me, I'm going to get you.
But I think that's a really good point, because what we never want to do is set a boundary when we're angry.
That's right.
One of the reasons we evidence to ourselves that boundaries aren't safe is that often we are pushed to the line or past the line of being reasonable. So we then go in on an attack, and of course we get attacked back. A boundary should always be calm, respectful, and honest. Calm, kind, respectful, and honest. Always.
I love that. So never set a boundary when angry. Instead, calm, respectful, and honest.
Absolutely. And you make it about you, not the other person.
I love that. I love that. Hearing comments that say, so good. I think they're liking it. I know they are.
More.
And so that concept of we're setting the boundary when we're calm, collected, and caring, never when we're angry. No. What other tips go along with boundary setting? So
first of all, work out how you feel about something. So when you know how, because all emotions are signposts, there's no such thing as a bad emotion.
Yeah.
So for instance, if you're in shame, the chances are that you've got to cross your own boundary. Start asking yourself why. Don't judge yourself. There's no purpose. If you judge, you can't be curious. The two don't go together. Okay. So wow, I'm really surprised I just did that. What's going on for me? Start to understand yourself. Yeah. When we get angry, for instance, it's almost always our needs aren't being met. Get specific. What's the need that isn't being met? What is my responsibility here? How can I get that need met? So you get that need met by communicating clearly, calmly, kindly, respectfully. But the other person does not have to fulfill it. This is the gig, and it's so important. You might say to me, Michelle, no, I'm not going to pick my socks up. That's just not what I do. Now we're going to sit down and we're going to either compromise or we're going to make another decision.
Yep.
But it's coming from a place of honest truth and both acknowledging our needs. You need to be messy. I need the socks picked up.
Yep.
So,
I like that. I like that. I'm watching some of the comments. It's landing very well. People are very excited for this.
and I've just seen somebody repeat that, if you judge, you can't be curious. That is a real killer. That's a golden nugget there. Take that into the world, not just around boundaries. Whenever you think good or bad, right or wrong, you're in judgment. Ask yourself, I wonder why. I wonder what would happen next. I wonder what if. Everything's an experiment. There's no such thing as failure. When you're moving forward with boundaries, you're almost certainly going to be a little bit harsh or a little bit soft. Yeah. What I would say to you is expect not to be brilliant at them, but rehearse them. Speak them out loud. As you will know so well, 38% of all communication is tonality. So if I say, oh, pick up the socks, it drives me nuts when you don't. Or if I say, you know what, it would mean so much to me if you picked up your socks. Totally different experience that you're having, and therefore you will give back to me differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a training for a dentist office one time, and I said, whatever behavior you want more of, if you have a boundary that says, hey, we need more of this behavior and less of this behavior out here. One thing that you just said is so powerful and so true. I always tease them. And I know that people don't agree with having dolphins in captivity. I don't agree with the concept either. Let them be wild and free. What I'm amazed by is how people have been able to train a dolphin. Like that dolphin can, at a hand signal, fly through the water, jump out through a hoop, back into the water, and do a backflip at the same time. I'm like, how do you do that? How did they do that? They didn't get it by attacking the dolphin or getting mad at the dolphin at any point. They did it by slowly giving it rewards every time it got closer to doing it right. And I think with boundaries, it's the same concept. And I always made a joke. I'm like, okay, you could train a dolphin because they're smart, but my God, what if you get stuck with a goldfish and you don't have a smart dolphin that you're in a relationship with. You have a goldfish that you're in a relationship with. My God, no one can train a goldfish. And I was on YouTube one time, and I swear to God, I saw a guy teach a goldfish how to jump through a damn hoop. And I was like, okay, if someone can train a goldfish, you can train anybody on boundary.
I used to have a pond, and I used to ring a bell, and the fish used to come to the top. That's
amazing. It's amazing. And it comes through training. Like you said, just like if you're building a muscle. But you build them. And I was talking to a young person this morning. It was really personal stuff she was sharing with me on here. But she had boundaries being stepped on from two different sides. There was a person in her family that she really wanted to connect with. And there was a side of the family that was like, do not talk to them because blah, 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 blah. And she was like, but I want to talk to them. I would like to have a relationship with them. I don't want to be stupid. I don't want to get stomped on, but I'd like to have a relationship with them. And they're like, well, if you have a relationship with them, then we're going to be mad at you. And we're not going to. And it's like, whoa. And I said, you have to tune into this conversation you and I are going to have. Well, I was like, yeah, I hope that you have no boundaries. You have no boundaries around your ability to relate with this person without getting stomped on. Your ability to communicate and effectively connect with the rest of these people without letting them just tell you what to do or stomp on how you want to live your life. And I was like, that's so interesting. And that's such a tough point to be in for so many people.
It is. And family boundaries can be the hardest because there is an embedded dynamic that you have grown up with. And the blueprint is, it's like this. This is how we do it. This is how we operate. You know, there are families that have ongoing feuds. You know, that's not unusual at all. But we can get pushed from pillar to post actually in that feud. Whereas if you're able to think about it, if you think about what kind of person is telling you that they will make your life difficult if you show up and take care of your needs. Now let's look at it that way. Let's flip this. Because usually there's, you are being selfish. Okay, well, let's just step back a bit. I'm asking very politely for my needs to be met, but that's being seen as selfish. What do I do with that? Remember, your street and my street, it's not my responsibility how you respond, it's yours. So I might say, I'm sorry that you consider it selfish, and it's really important that I take care of my needs, and I show up for that side of the family.
Yeah. It's so powerful. So powerful. Another place this is happening heavily. It is polite, and it's kind, it's generous. The piece her and I came to a conclusion to is, I said that, you know, there's 3 pieces, and boundaries was the third. I said the first one, since it's family, could you find a way to love somebody even if you didn't know them? Like if you, and she goes, what do you mean? I said, if you were walking down the road and you saw someone who was begging and had nothing, could you still find love for them? She said, of course I could. And I said, okay, then you can find love for these people as well. Because if you could find love for a perfect stranger, you could find love for someone who's not a stranger. I said, could you find kindness for someone even if you thought they've been mean to others? She said, what do you mean? I said, well, let's get crazy. What if you visited someone who in prison who's done horrific things to other humans or people or animals of the planet? Could you still be kind to them if you choose to? She goes, yeah, I guess. I don't know why I would, but I could. And I said, okay, so you could choose to be kind to people who are mean. You could choose to be loving and to people you don't know. Well, could you choose to be kind and loving to people you do know who aren't necessarily mean all the time? Okay, they have mean moments, but they're not mean all the time. She goes, yeah. And I said, then the third piece is the most important piece, which we're talking about here right now, which is the only way you can do love and kindness with people who are coming at you in that way is by now having some type of boundary in place to make sure they don't take advantage and or hurt you in any way while you're sharing your love and kindness with them. Because the moment you have a boundary, now you have space to be able to share that love and kindness with them without the fear or worry that they're going to somehow take advantage, hurt, stomp on, or attack you in any way, because there's a firm boundary there. I think the other place this is happening, possibly in the US more than other parts of the world right now, is there's people who rightfully have so much to express in this very moment that they feel has not been heard, which is a big thing. Yeah. And at this moment, they will stomp on people's boundaries to make sure it's heard. And it's like, oof.
Yep.
And so what was fascinating about this, my interpretation is, I will uphold my boundaries, and you have no clue how much I have your back in this, but I will 100% uphold my boundaries in this process. And I will not allow someone to stomp down my boundaries because they've decided it's their moment to do so.
Okay, so we go back to that diva and the doormat, because otherwise the danger is that we say, you know, for all of the right reasons, you're behaving like this, but however, the behavior, I get what's underneath it, but the behavior is not, that's not coming into my lane. No. So that's that boundary. And that brings me to self-boundaries, because boundaries start with ourselves. I've never yet met, and I've worked with, well, I've done about 40,000 coaching hours. So I've done a lot of coaching, and I've never yet met anybody that's got good external boundaries without having internal boundaries.
Interesting.
So
tell me more.
First thing we need to do is we need to show up for ourselves. What are the boundaries that I have around, let's just say, my spending, how much I might lend somebody, how much I'll pay for, how much I'll go spend on a night out. Okay, that's my boundary. I've worked that out beforehand. I don't go over it. About my own boundary about my car, for instance, who I might lend it to, who I might not, what are, you know, only if they're insured or whatever it is, okay? How much time, and do I allow myself to have a lot of negative thoughts? A mental boundary for me is no, that's just not okay. Yeah. My boundaries around health. How much, you know, how much do I allow myself? How much slack do I cut myself, particularly in lockdown? Yeah. I've got a few extra lockdown curves. I softened my boundaries a little bit, yeah? So start with that and it's self-discipline. Ultimately, when you have those boundaries, you're learning self-discipline. You're showing up with integrity to yourself. You know, you don't make a promise to somebody and not deliver it, but we do it to ourselves. That's the real start of boundaries.
Yeah. It's the way I was taught that when I was young is it's a level 1 leader, someone who does what they say they will do. If you can't lead yourself by being congruent and consistent in what you say, there's no way you could possibly lead another human.
Exactly. And what often happens there is that we are inconsistent with our boundaries. So I might be rigid on Friday and soft or boundaryless on Monday. You don't know whether you're coming or going. Yeah. Clear is kind.
And so for those personal boundaries, where's the starting point? Is it a pen and paper for people? Is it thinking through these? Is it clarity? Is it asking someone to help? Is it having a session with someone and to talk through it?
Great question. Do you know what? It's a difficult one because I don't think it's one size fits all. But right now we've got to do a one size fits all. So what I would say is notice where you feel resentful or angry. Start there. And that's with yourself, by the way, not just other people. And you could put shame in there. One of the things I've not talked about with boundaryless is the uncontainment. So I have clients that show up and I specialize in love addiction. That's one of my areas. So I have a lot of clients show up and on the first date, that person knows everything about their abusive childhood. They know every sexual fantasy they've ever had. Like, okay, look, you've just literally you vomited all of your stuff out. The reason most people do that is low self-esteem. And if I show you my warts up front, you can handle the rest of me. Okay, so there is a reason. But actually, we need to have that clarity. What if I feel shame after I've done something? I've got a dodgy boundary. If I'm angry, my needs aren't being met. If I feel guilty, there's something going on with my values. I've stepped on my values tail. Okay. So I think start by the emotions and work backwards. And resentment is a particularly powerful one. That means that we're a doormat. Resentment means we're in the doormat stage.
Got it. What about the concept of if the other person really cared, they would have known?
That's a lovely one. But that's a bit like saying if the other person cared, they happen to have great ESP and superpowers. You know what? Most of us are so busy trying to make sense of our own stuff. Trying to make sense of somebody else's is crazy. We have a categoric obligation to make it easy for the other person just by telling them, this is what really, really helps me. This is my need. This is, you know, wants and needs are different. It's worth differentiating. But you know what? In a relationship, honesty is everything to me. And I just want to be upfront about that. So, you know, if you are tempted to tell a little fib, I'd much appreciate, I can handle anything as long as it's honest. Now you're just laying it on the table. How clear and kind is that? Yeah. How simple. Takes the drama, the guesswork. And so, I do hear that one a lot, but yeah, we are responsible for making sure our needs get met. This isn't guesswork.
Yeah, I love it. I think going back to that program, the lady said an honest person to her is a person who will tell you when they're lying. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I was like, what does that mean? And she says to expect a human being to never tell a white lie, a little lie, a something lie. but that's not human. Like humans will say it, especially when they're under pressure, when they feel something's at risk. Like those are the things that cause more likelihood to happen. And she said, what's interesting though, like you said, for someone to have a boundary that says, listen, I don't like if you're consistently lying, it's just not going to work. That's a hard boundary. But for that person to then say, if you tell me when you lie, we can work through that. As long as if we learn from it, if we evolve from it, if we get better at it, if it gets worse, we're going to have an issue. But that's so powerful though, because it's upholding a boundary. And it's flexibility because it's working through the process. It's not rigid. That's like, oh, you said you didn't open the door and the door's open, so it's you're done. It's not rigid. It's not a doormat of, oh, I guess it's not that big of a deal. It's like, no, hey, did you do this? And they're like, shit, yeah, sorry, I lied. That sucks. Man, let me get better at this. Let me try it this better. I did do that, and it is my fault, and I'm willing to own it. And it's like, wow, that beautiful part of that flexibility, the in-between that's committed to working through it together. It's so powerful. I think also what you said, they don't have magic powers. They don't have ESP. They're not mind readers. The ability to express boundaries is so important. I think for most people who don't have that flexible, beautiful boundary, the expressing it is one of the scariest parts. Because it's like, for one, sitting down with a pen and paper and thinking, like, what is okay? What's not okay? Where are my boundaries? Where do they exist? Financially, business-wise, health-wise, emotionally, spiritually, physically, all these things. But then to express them, like that's the moment of truth.
That's why I say practice that. Once you know how you feel, then what behavior, work out the behavior that is bothering you.
Yep.
Get really clear about it, but practice speaking it. Because otherwise, what do? Again, we get too close to the wire. We're either too timid, and remember that, oh, I'd really be, could you do so-and-so? Own it with kindness and confidence. That clarity is so important. And so when we lie, one of the things that is great manipulation, is when somebody apologizes, Jairek, and they don't change the behavior. So you get the sorry, over again. That one, I want to be a big red flag. You need a boundary.
Yeah.
Hang on, there's something going on here. You've done it a couple of times. You've said sorry both times, but you've not changed it. So you're not really sorry.
No.
That's a boundary break.
Yeah. One of my favorites is a true apology is a change in behavior, not just nice words. And if there's not a behavior change that comes with it, it's just fluffy words, and fluffy words aren't worth much. But the behavior change, the distinctive effort that causes something to be different, that's worth something. And that takes commitment. And,
going back to our dolphins and our goldfish, I really recommend that when your friend, your partner, whoever it is, makes that change, you acknowledge it, you do it. Humans love positive praise. Positive reinforcement. So even if you just see a tiny shift, you see the effort, shout it out.
Yeah.
Make them feel good. We'll do more of what makes us feel good.
Someone gave me an equation for appreciation. If you want more of something, they said if you take appreciation and put it on top, and then right below it, you put in the effort, and then you get the number of how well you're doing. So if you gave someone a level 10 appreciation and they had given a level 10 effort, then the equation is 0, so you're completely neutral.
I got you.
But if you give a level 20 appreciation when they gave a level 10 effort, you have a positive 10 up, which means it generally causes them to go, wow, I only gave a 10 effort. I got a 20 back. Oh, now they feel excited to give more. They want to give more. They're willing. They're like, man, how do I every time I get 1, I get 10. This is amazing. Like they get excited. But if you give them a level 10 reward or 10 appreciation and they give you a level 20 effort, now they feel this is where she called it the death spiral occurs, where they feel like, ugh, why am I trying so hard when they don't even appreciate it?
Well, we go back into resentment.
Yeah, exactly. And so just the key, when people you express your boundary, for people listening and they respect that boundary, If they respect it at a level 10 effort, at least giving them 11.
Yeah.
Give them something a little bit more if you want them to keep doing it. And like you said, people love that appreciation. It's amazing. I was doing a sales training this morning.
It's so easy.
I was doing a sales training this morning for a group, and I was telling them, I said, you know, what if you built the way you connect with people in a way that this is the most appreciative they've ever felt in their entire life, just doing this work with you? How do you think that might change your business and sales? And they were like, whoa. And I said, for some people, you giving them that much appreciation and love and kindness in that conversation might be the most they've ever received in their whole life in that moment. And that's transformative for people to have that taste of what's possible. I think the same thing when you're able to create that boundary and then to, again, help people move through and help them respect it by appreciating them, acknowledging them, flooding them with that excess, like you're doing it. It's amazing how much more they'll follow it. I think we have a big question.
Works with us too. Mm-hmm. We should be appreciating ourselves at the end of every day. Write down 3 things that you appreciate about yourself today. 3 ways, and another way I put this is 3 ways I've impressed myself today. Whatever we focus on, we magnify. And again, that is a basis for great boundaries, because we're focusing on what we want more of, what we want more of ourselves. Not just
we have a big question, and I have a feeling a question like this would eventually pop up.
Yeah.
It says, how do you set boundaries when your partner is involved in an affair and ultimately you'd like them back? Fear of losing them, ?
Well, I guess what's happening there, you are being called to make a decision whether you are going to uphold your own values or you are going to feed theirs. You know, I would actually say to you, if somebody isn't prepared to meet you on your boundaries, and that's your need to show up in the world, your need for self-esteem, self-respect, my hunch is, and I can't see your name there, but I really feel for you, because that fear of losing them is eroding your self-esteem, your self-confidence, your self-love, your self-care. I would come right back to you. I'd put the boundaries with you and take care of yourself.
Yeah, another one came through right behind it, said, I have a fear of losing someone when I know it's not the right fit as well.
Okay, so I guess what I would say there, and now there's a bit of coaching, I would go back to the first time that's happened. This won't be the first time. This will be a pattern in your life. Now, if you look right the way down along the patterns, how have you demonstrated your boundaries? You almost certainly have got soft boundaries. You might go rigid every now and again, so it's a big F you don't push away. But most of the time, it's just do what you want with me because I want to feel lovable. That's what we're doing. We're actually selling our soul to feel a little bit of lovability. And I would just say to you, come back, give yourself that lovability with boundaries, protect yourself, self-care, self-love. I know I'm sounding a bit hippie la-la, but this stuff will change. And then you will attract somebody who respects you. Because here's the gig. If we've got floppy boundaries, we're not putting out self-respect and self-worth into the world. We attract somebody to reflect that. So, and somebody just said, this is a pattern in all my relationships and trauma bonds. I totally get that. It starts long time ago, but please remember, you're not defined by how you started in life. You might have been abandoned by your dad. I was adopted. So, big abandonment issues, but we can overcome those if we understand why we're putting up with this. And the first place to go is, you make me feel lovable, even if it's a crumb, and it usually is, by the way. You deserve the whole loaf.
Yeah. Someone circling around about a fake apology. I think we talked about that before. Apology is by changed behavior. So
absolutely,
if there's not a changed behavior, it's just fluffy words. Yeah, there's something I think in Russian, and I do not know how to read that one.
My Russian's rusty.
So let's keep going. So we talked about soft boundaries. We talked about rigid boundaries. We talked about this ideal, which is flexible boundaries. We talked about, in order to have the flexible boundaries, it's taking time in a calm, loving space to create them, not creating boundaries when you're pissed or hurt or sad or anything else. It's saying, hey, when I have my head upon my shoulders, I'm going to sit down with my heart and I'm going to write out what's real for me. I'm going to write out what I need. I'm going to write out what I want. And I'm going to write out, what I'm okay with and what I'm not.
Yeah.
The other way I've heard that said is, where am I flexible and where am I not? What is a must? What is not flexible? And you got to have that list so like if you cross these lines, there's just a few with me, but if you cross them, there's an immediate cut here. And here's what it looks like. I think the other piece you might have mentioned, or I would ask, if there's a line that's crossed, should there be a predetermined way to end it, move it, rearrange it, do something with it, instead of trying to come up with it on the spot? Because if they only determined, hey, here's the line, and if this line's crossed, something happens. But what if they didn't determine what something was? Now they're in the moment going, they crossed it.
Okay, so look, first of all, I recommend pretty much putting your cards on the table. This is what's important to me. For me, it's timekeeping is really important to me. I see that mark of respect. If somebody's always showing up late, I have an issue with that. To another person, that just doesn't matter. They're really cool with it. So get really clear about what the deal breakers are with you. Now, we've talked about flexibility, and I think there is room for flexibility. You know what? If somebody has really screwed up, really get clear what your red flags are. Let the other person know. And I think you can do this. You know what? It's just something that I'd like to see in every relationship, whether it's from family or friends or a romantic relationship. And it's okay also if you change your boundaries. Now, I was boundaryless. So I had to go to people and say, look, I've not been fair. I haven't been honest with you. Because when you show up late, it actually really hurts me, but I've just smiled and pretended it was okay. And I'm sorry for that.
Yeah.
I'm taking full responsibility. I'm not expecting them to be mind readers. But I think if you set a consequence, if you have an affair, we're done. I think you've got to think very carefully before you override that consequence, because what you're setting yourself up for is they don't believe the rest of the boundaries.
Yeah.
So be careful, be very fair. And I think one of the things that sometimes people do is that they get too boundary happy, and they say, right, to the kids, right, if you spend too much time on the iPad over 2 hours, that's it, I'm throwing it off the balcony. No, that's not really going to happen. So make sure that what you said, this is one of the reasons we want to put out a boundary when we're calm, not when we're already feeling abused or lied to or angry.
Absolutely. How do I build a solid, fresh love relationship with Dad when he stopped believing in himself and criticizes with anger all the time at home?
Okay, so if I take an orange and we squeeze that orange, what comes out of it?
Orange juice.
Absolutely. It's not grapefruit juice. It's not grapefruit juice. It's not apple juice. It's not pineapple juice. What somebody is putting out there is what's inside of them. For some reason, your dad is full of anger. That means he doesn't feel his needs are being met, and attack. His internal world is full of self-attack. I'm going to let you into a secret. When I met my real dad when I was 41, he was pretty negative. Okay. And I certainly, with my new world, 20 years ago, I learned that it was very important to be constructive and positive. And I sat down and I said to him, I love you so much. And I kind of struggle to get over here as much as I want to, because you poo-poo a lot of my ideas. It kind of feel a bit squished with your negativity. You always look for the problem, not the solution. And I wondered if we could talk about that and find another way. And 20 years on, we have the best relationship that a dad and daughter can have. But he had to brace himself. You know, that wasn't an easy conversation to have. And what I would say to you is speak to your dad. What about a dad who is undecided, making his young son think the same thing? Well, I guess that's a difficult one, because I'm not sure where you are in that dynamic, because you can't change somebody else.
Yeah.
You can only change yourself. So I need to know where you are in that dynamic so that you can keep your side of the street clean. And you never know, you might be able to lead by example.
I got another one from Olivia. It says, what if you know the red flags but continue to stay because you hope one day it will change?
Welcome to my old world. I know this one. You're dating on potential. And when you're dating on potential, what's happening is that you're under dating, okay? So you're not dating the real person. You're dating who you think they're going to turn into. So what is it that you need to turn into in order to date somebody that you believe you deserve now? Because having invested copious, I mean, I can't even go into the investments I've made in guys on their potential. They either realize their potential because, and by the way, they'll resent you and they'll be off, because by looking for their potential, you're putting yourself in one up. Nobody wants to feel this, and they'll feel it, even though they might take the goodies. So I would say this is work on yourself, my love. And it's not easy work, but honestly, it's fantastic work. And I've got a YouTube, I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, I've got a YouTube channel with loads of these kind of love addiction tips and how to help with this. Go find them. I honestly, that will help a lot.
Here's another one. It says, I find myself constantly ghosting people or getting ghosted. So constantly either disappearing on people or them disappearing on her. I think, yeah, it's her. This makes me scared to be in a long-term relationship, as one can't just stop caring. How do I establish better boundaries with myself on this?
Okay, so if you are being ghosted, you're almost certainly not seeing the red flags. And you know what we do? We see their potential, we fixate on the things we like about them, and the red flags where right at the beginning, they didn't call you when they said they would, they didn't, you know, basically they're not delivering. You somehow or other have allowed that. And what I would say is right from the get-go, I was dating somebody recently, and he said he was going to call on Tuesday. He didn't call. And I just texted him straight away, and I said, listen, I'm not hung up about Tuesday. I've just got a thing about under-promising and over-delivering. Whatever you say you're going to do, just do it. Otherwise, I won't have respect for you. He changed. I didn't continue, but he changed. And so be honest right at the beginning. Let them know it's just not on. And if they value you, they won't do this.
Can a person unlove someone? Is it practical?
Love somebody. Okay. Well, love, I'm not sure is a choice, but fixation is. So how are we feeding that? So if somebody's not healthy for me, but my heart really loves them, the chances are this is some form of trauma bonding, by the way, because the heart generally will not have a pure love for somebody that's abusing us. So what I would say to you is look at the behavior, look at the pattern of your history. Where are you not boundarying yourself on, you know, you checking their keep looking at their pictures, look at their social media. So you're feeding that heartache. That's about it.
One up a bit. It says, how can I believe in myself when I have 2 big scars in my face? Sorry for too many questions.
Okay, I'm going to be dead straight with you. You turn those into a USP. So Joaquin Phoenix, one of the sexiest men that has ever walked the planet, he has a big scar here. Yeah? There are others, I just can't think of them right now.
Seal, the singer?
I'm so sorry?
There's a singer, his name is Seal. He has a giant...
Absolutely, yeah. You've got loads of scars. And, you know, when we own our imperfections, we own them. And I'm, you know, look, I mean, if when I'd met Jairek, I had had white roots, I would have crawled into a hole. Right now it's lockdown. I can't get into hairdresser. I don't care. I'm owning my white roots rather than apologizing for them. Yeah. And I would do exactly the same thing with anything you perceive as an imperfection in your body. Give it some attitude.
Yeah. I had a photography session one time with a guy who does professional headshots for like fancy people. And he had me stand there and he got so close with his camera and he's taking pictures like, crap, like this guy's really in there. And it was so interesting because at the end, he pulled up the photos and he says, yeah. I said, can I have the photos? And he goes, no, not yet. And I said, why? You have them. I have a hard drive, like put them on the hard drive. And he's like, no. I need to go through and do the touch-ups.
Photoshop, yeah.
And I said, what do you mean touch-ups? And he's like, well, if you look closely, when you smile, you have these creases. I'm going to have to remove those.
You've got laughter lines.
And he's like, your eyelids are low, so I'm going to have to like open your eyes a little on the hair. And I was like, why the hell would you do that? And he looked at me and he's like, because it makes you look better.
In his eyes.
And I was like, what an asshole. Second, excuse language, I was like, what are you talking about? This is me. And he's like, you're telling me you want the photos with the wrinkles and your big eyes and everything? I was like, yeah, because that's what I look like. And he's like, and he literally said, he said, in 22 years of doing this, I've never had one person ask me to have the actual real photos.
That's incredible.
Like, you work with some weird people.
That is scary. Yeah.
But it's that concept.
Full credit to you.
Yeah, but it's that concept right there of, did that always work that way? And I think something you said is so important. Giving it that flair, giving it that attitude, giving it that love, you know, taking time. And it's the simplest thing in the world, thought-wise. It's very difficult to do for so many people because we rarely do it, which is actually standing in the mirror, looking yourself over, noticing the things that you judge the hell out of on yourself, and then purposely putting love into those things and saying, what are 5 things I actually love about my big droopy eyelids? What are 5 things I love about my little wrinkles when I do that? What do I love about my gigantic smile? Like, it's looking at the things that you judge the hell out of yourself, and it's saying, how can I pour so much damn love into it that I actually really appreciate about myself? Mm. That process for the person who's asking about the scars is life-changing. My wife has a huge scar right here. She was playing aggressive Frisbee, like ultimate Frisbee, and she jumped up for one. Someone else jumped up for one. They both missed it, and it just whacked her straight there and sliced open her eyelid. It was gushing blood everywhere. And I think it's beautiful. I think it's cool to know I'm with someone that plays life that aggressively, that goes after things and is willing to put herself at risk to go after what she wants in life. I think that's so cool.
There's the story we put around it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's actually what you've just done, is you've put a beautiful story around that scar.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say, you know, whatever we're worried about, put a different story, change your story. And authenticity is becoming the #1 value. You're seeing more and more these homogenized people, and there's lots of people that look the same, and great, you know, that's your gig. But what you're seeing is people value real. Own it.
It's coming. So, quick question. We got about, I think, 6 minutes before Instagram will kick us out.
Yeah.
But if people want, you mentioned YouTube has lots of videos that people can learn more about this from. Where else? Yeah. How else? Where else can people engage with you and connect with you and learn from you?
Okay, so thank you for asking. So YouTube channel, just Michelle Zelli, Zelli. Obviously Instagram, I put up lots of tips, and I'm big on stories, trying to keep you smiling and vibing and staying in the right lane. And then I also have a Facebook coaching page. I have a personal page which got just dogs. You'll know the personal page because I'm a massive dog lover. The other one's got coaching tips, and you can expect a little bit of mischief and humor in there as well. We want to also, I try to keep this engaging and entertaining. Some of this work's really heavy, and if we can engage, and I know you're very much the same, do it from the heart and keep it real, but I also want to keep you smiling. Have and subscribe, because there's lots of stuff. I put videos up pretty much every other day.
Very cool. Very cool. So how should we wrap this up? How do we put a bow on this for people? What's a takeaway they could immediately do, or some actions they could have that if they were to take that and do this today, it would help move them at least in the right direction?
Okay, so right now, absolutely in this moment, what is the one relationship, the one interaction that you leave feeling resentful, angry, unappreciated? Okay, just pick one initially, and now get clear about where your needs aren't being met, and then start to work out how you can put that boundary down. And we've given you loads of examples here. There it is. Thank you very much. There's the link. We've given you loads of examples today on how you can actually speak that to someone else. Speak it out loud. Remember that 38% of that communication is going to be received in how you present it. So keep your voice kind, keep your body posture open, and think it through, speak it through, but start to value yourself and do it with yourself as well. Where are you trouncing your own boundaries? Where do you keep getting cross with yourself that you're not looking after yourself?
I love that. Well, thank you for spending time with us on here. Thank you for sharing so much. We really, really appreciate it. I think if you got value from this, could you just say thank you in the comments real quick, just so we know that you're out there and it landed. There's so much here for people. I hope they take it to heart. I hope they do and apply this. I hope they realize, like you said, you're not going to be brilliant at it in the beginning. So just give yourself enough time to practice. And you know, over time, it's a blessing to see what happens in people's lives. And you're a
stay in
testament.
touch with me. Ping me over. Let me know how you change. And remember, 20 years ago, I didn't know what a boundary was. And now I'm the mistress of boundaries. They've changed my life, and they'll change yours too. They really will. And it's great to see you again. Next time you're in London, give me a call. Let me know.
I will. Thank you again.
Take good care. Bye, everybody. Lovely to see you. Bye.